Business strategy is often taught as a planning discipline. Firms analyze markets, define objectives, allocate resources, and execute a plan. That model works in stable environments. It becomes weaker when markets are volatile, competitors move quickly, customers change behavior, technologies disrupt business models, and regulation or geopolitics alters the operating environment. In these conditions, the winner is not always the largest firm or the firm with the most capital. Often, the winner is the organization that learns faster, adapts faster, and makes better decisions under uncertainty. This is where the order loop becomes important. Boyd's framework is commonly simplified into four stages: observe, orient, decide, and act. But the real idea is deeper than a circular checklist. Boyd's work focused on survival, adaptation, tempo, and the ability to operate inside an opponent's decision cycle. In military theory, this means forcing an adversary to keep reacting while you keep shaping the environment. In business, the same principle applies. A company that understands reality faster than its competitors, interprets it more accurately, and acts with discipline can shape the market instead of merely responding to it. Boyd's ideas influenced US military thinking, including maneuver warfare, which shifted emphasis away from pure attrition and toward creating confusion, disorder, and paralysis in the opponent. The central argument of this video is straightforward. The OODA loop changes business strategy by turning strategy into a repeatable operating rhythm. It gives leaders a way to connect information, interpretation, decision making, and action. That connection matters because many organizations do not fail from lack of information. They fail because information does not become insight, insight does not become decision, and decision does not become action. Here is where it all begins. The origins and meaning of the OODA loop. John Boyd developed the OODA loop from military experience, especially aerial combat and strategic theory. The model describes a continuous cycle of observing the environment, orienting to what the information means, deciding on a course of action, and acting. The important part is that the loop is continuous. Action changes the environment, which produces new observations, recurring new orientation, and further decisions. Modern summaries often describe OODA as a simple linear model that is useful for beginners but incomplete. Boyd's deeper version places orientation at the center. Orientation is the mental model through which information is interpreted. It includes experience, culture, training, assumptions, doctrine, and analytical judgment. In other words, two companies can observe the same market data and reach different conclusions because they are oriented differently. Cambridge's discussion of dynamic capabilities notes that Boyd did not imagine OODA as purely sequential. It included feedback loops, and orientation acted as a frame of reference shaped by culture, personality, and experience. This distinction is critical for business. Observation is not enough. Data is not strategy. A company can have dashboards, consultants, analytics teams, and customer research, yet still misread the market. The reason is poor orientation. The organization may be trapped in old assumptions, internal politics, legacy business models, or incentives that reward preserving the current system. The OODA loop forces leaders to ask, what are we seeing? What does it mean? What should we do? And how fast can we test that action in the real world? Boyd's military logic also emphasized getting inside the adversary's decision cycle. In strategic terms, this means moving with enough clarity and tempo that the opponent is forced into reaction. A US Marine Corps University article describes the concept as forcing an opponent to reobserve, reorient, redecide, and react, thereby allowing the faster and better oriented actor to capture initiative. In business, opponent does not always mean a direct competitor. It can mean market uncertainty, customer churn, regulatory change, technological disruption, supply chain shock, or internal bureaucracy. The point remains the same. The slower organization becomes reactive. The better oriented organization becomes adaptive. Implementing the OODA loop through Agile Scrum and Microsoft Teams. The OODA loop becomes most useful in business when it is not treated as theory, but as an operating system. In an Agile Scrum environment, OODA can be implemented through the way a team plans work, runs stand-ups, manages Jira tickets, captures knowledge, escalates blockers, and coordinates through Microsoft Teams. Scrum provides the rhythm. Microsoft Teams provides the communication layer. Jira or Planner provides the work tracking layer. OODA provides the decision logic. In this model, the person managing the agile flow is not simply updating tickets or running stand-up. That person is operating the team's decision cycle. Their job is to make sure information becomes interpretation. Interpretation becomes decision. Decision becomes action, and action becomes learning. The Scrum framework already supports this logic. The Scrum Guide defines the sprint as a fixed length cycle of 1 month or less, containing sprint planning, daily scrums, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. It also states that during the sprint, no changes should endanger the sprint goal, quality should not decrease, and the product backlog can be refined as more is learned. This makes Scrum naturally compatible with OODA because both systems assume the environment changes during execution and teams must adapt without losing direction. The tactical interpretation is this: every sprint is an OODA loop. The team observes the work environment, orients around what matters, decides what to commit to, acts through delivery, and then inspects the result. The next sprint then begins with better information. The first stage is observe. In a Scrum team, observation happens through backlog items, stakeholder requests, production issues, user feedback, incidents, release constraints, compliance requirements, support tickets, and operational friction. This is where the team gathers reality. The mistake many teams make is treating observation as simple task intake. They receive work, place it into Jira, and assume they are being agile. That is not enough. Observation must separate real work from noise. A stakeholder request is not automatically a priority. A Jira ticket is not automatically valuable. A blocker is not just an inconvenience. It is evidence that the delivery system has encountered friction. From an OODA perspective, your first job is to make reality visible. The second stage is orient. This is where the team interprets what the work actually means. Orientation is the most important part because bad interpretation leads to bad execution. A team may observe that a ticket is blocked, but orientation asks why. Is the requirement unclear? Is the dependency external? Is the product owner unavailable? Is the release pathway undefined? Is compliance approval missing? Is the team carrying too much work in progress? This is where you become strategically useful. You are not just asking, what is the status? You are asking, what is slowing the system down? What does it mean? And what decision does the team need? Microsoft Teams can support the Orient stage by acting as the team's live coordination hub. Teams channels can be structured around work streams, releases, incidents, blockers, and sprint ceremonies. The objective is not to create more chat. The objective is to create a clean decision environment. Microsoft Planner in Teams brings tasks and plans across Microsoft 365 into one location and can support individual tasks, team initiatives, and larger projects aligned to strategic objectives. The third stage is decide. In Scrum, this occurs most clearly during sprint planning. The team decides the sprint goal, selects work from the product backlog, and clarifies what can realistically be delivered. The sprint goal matters because it prevents the sprint from becoming a random basket of tickets. The 2020 Scrum Guide introduced the product goal to create focus toward a larger, valuable objective, and each sprint should move the product closer to that product goal. Tactically, this means sprint planning should not start with what tickets are available. It should start with what outcome matters most right now. A weak Scrum team plans around capacity. A stronger Scrum team plans around mission. A weak team says, we can fit 10 tickets. A stronger team says, this sprint must reduce release risk, unblock onboarding, fix the compliance gap, or stabilize the workflow. That is OODA applied to Agile. You are not only choosing tasks, you are choosing where the team applies pressure. The fourth stage is act. This is sprint execution. Work moves through Jira, Planner, or another tracking system. Developers build, analysts clarify, testers validate. The product owner makes prioritization calls. Release managers coordinate deployment. Documentation is updated. Stakeholders are informed. Microsoft Teams becomes useful here because it reduces the delay between issue detection and team response. Atlassian's Jira Cloud integration with Microsoft Teams allows teams to receive real-time activity notifications and create, search, share, and update Jira work items inside Teams. It also supports link previews, custom notifications, and the ability to view, assign, comment on, and watch work items from Teams. Strategically, this matters because tool switching slows the loop. If the team discusses a blocker in Teams but the Jira ticket is not updated, the system splits into two realities: the conversation reality and the execution reality. That is dangerous. The team may think something is being handled because it was discussed, but the actual workflow system still shows no owner, no status change, and no evidence of movement. So the rule should be simple. If a decision happens in Teams, the execution system must reflect it. In practical terms, a blocker raised in Teams must be linked to a Jira ticket. A decision made in stand-up must update the ticket. A release risk discussed in chat must be captured in the release tracker. A process decision must be documented in Confluence or the knowledge base. An action item must have an owner, due date, and location. This is how you stop Agile from becoming verbal noise. The daily scrum is the most important tactical audit point in the sprint. It should not be a passive status update. It should be a daily command and control checkpoint. The goal is to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the plan for the next day. Scrum. Org describes Scrum events as purposeful and time-boxed, with the daily Scrum being one of the formal Scrum events. The sprint review becomes the external observation point. The team inspects what was delivered and compares it against stakeholder reality. The question is not merely, did we finish the tickets? The stronger question is, did this sprint create the outcome we intended? If the answer is no, the team must update its orientation. The retrospective becomes the internal reorientation point. It is where the team studies its own system. Did work get blocked because requirements were weak? Did Jira lack clarity? Did teams' conversations fail to translate into action? Did release governance slow the sprint? Did the product owner make decisions too late? Did documentation lag behind delivery? The retrospective should produce one or two concrete system improvements, not vague statements like communicate better. That is useless. A tactical retrospective produces actions such as all release related tickets must have a deployment owner before sprint planning. Any ticket blocked for more than 24 hours must be posted in the blockers channel. Every sprint goal must be pinned in the team sprint channel. All stand-up decisions must be reflected in Jira by end of day. Any confluence page linked to a release must have an owner and last reviewed date. That is how OODA becomes operational. Microsoft Loop can also support this kind of live alignment. Microsoft has described Jira integration with Loop as a way to bring Jira issues into Loop for project tracking, with data staying in sync across both tools. This can be useful when a team needs a lightweight live workspace for sprint notes, risks, blockers, and action items, while still keeping Jira as the system of record. The strategic model should be this. Teams is the communication layer, Jira is the execution layer, Confluence is the knowledge layer, Planner or Loop can be the coordination layer, Scrum is the delivery rhythm, OODA is the decision engine. When combined properly, this creates a disciplined operating system. The team does not just do Agile. It continuously senses reality, interprets it, decides what matters, acts, and learns. The key management lesson is that Agile fails when ceremonies become disconnected from decision making. A team can run stand ups, update Jira, attend planning, and hold retrospectives while still being strategically slow. OODA prevents that by forcing every ceremony to answer one question. How does this help the team move from information to action? For someone managing Scrum operations, Jira hygiene, documentation, release coordination, and Microsoft Teams communication, the role is therefore more strategic than it looks. You are not just maintaining admin, you are protecting the team's decision cycle. If Jira is outdated, the team cannot observe accurately. If team's discussions are messy, the team cannot orient clearly. If sprint planning lacks a goal, the team cannot decide properly. If blockers are not escalated, the team cannot act. If retrospectives do not change behavior, the team cannot learn. That is the full audit Scrum operating logic. The practical takeaway is this: Agile is not about moving tickets. It is about shortening the distance between reality, decision, and action. Microsoft Teams, Jira, Confluence, Planner, and Scrum ceremonies only matter if they support that cycle. If they do not, they become theater. A tactically mature Agile team should therefore run every sprint like this. Observe reality through backlog, metrics, stakeholder input, risks, and blockers. Orient through refinement, teams discussion, analysis, documentation, and dependency review. Decide through sprint planning, prioritization, escalation, and release calls. Act through delivery, testing, documentation, deployment, and stakeholder communication. Learn through review, retrospective, and the next sprint. That is how the OODA Loop can be implemented through Agile Scrum and Microsoft Teams, not as a theory, but as a practical system for controlling work, reducing confusion, and increasing strategic execution speed. Thank you for watching this video.